Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog are enjoying a day at the amusement park.
Wonder Dog!
To make it up to Wonder Dog, they'll patch his nose up and buy him a hot dog. He does like the hot dogs here.
Hey, since you just had a bath, you won't have to take another one this week.
Hey, Wendy, take a look at that.
Golly, that's a big seagull.
I wonder why it keeps flying around like that.
The squirrels like the hot dogs too. Wonder Dog will chase it to the one place they didn't want him to go.
Uh-oh, are we ever in trouble? You know how Wonder Dog is when he gets on a Ferris wheel.
Yeah, he never wants to come down.
If he had his way, he'd ride it all day. Or at least until he got his hot dog back.
Please, Wonder Dog, get off the next time around.
We'll buy you another hot dog.
Heavy on the mustard. Wendy, look, this is important.
Nothing is more important than...
She's right. Nothing is more important than a tidal wave that comes up and fizzles. But the weirdness is just beginning.
Listen to the voice of Dr. Pelagian. Let the defilers beware. They have 1 hour to stop their pollution of the seas before the seas strike back.
1 hour to stop all polluting. He might as well demand that hazels sprout wings and fly away. That's not a seagull, by the way. It's a talking albatross.
Wow, that's one of the biggest of all seabirds.
Right, and almost never found this far north. And they do very little talking.
That's because they got together and elected this one to speak for them. It's a more efficient way to get their points across.
The Troubler. Talking albatross spotted over Puget Sound.
Talking albatross delivers warning over San Francisco waterfront.
Talking albatross heard by thousands over San Diego.
Hey, bingo! We're getting a photo printout, too.
An albatross, sure enough.
Sounds like it's making its way down the coast. And it's wearing a two-way communication system so whoever owns the bird can see, hear, and talk through it. A drone that runs on fish, if you will.
This Dr. Pelagian has got to be a genius, whoever he is.
You mean Dr. Pelagian is not the man's real name?
Not likely, Wendy. Pelagian is a word that means inhabitant of the open sea.
In reality, Pelagian refers to a Christian heresy that was popular briefly in the 4th and 5th centuries. In the ocean, we say pelagic, and the majority of the open ocean is known as the pelagic zone. Critters that live up in the water column are called pelagic creatures. The ones that live on the bottom, such as crabs, lobsters, and shrimps, are called benthic creatures, and the bottom is the benthic zone, not the Benthian zone. I can let it slide, but it seems to me a guy who's enough of a genius to do all this stuff is enough of a genius to get the right word for himself. They're getting a call from Colonel Wilcox, their liaison with the military and the rest of the government.
He seems to have the idea that only he is fighting pollution.
And nothing could be further from the truth. Last month, the industrialists themselves held an emergency meeting and agreed to cooperate in eliminating pollution.
Yes?
And?
They decided to take all necessary steps.
It's nice they had a conference and have decided that. What have they done so far?
Hey, how about that?
Democracy in action.
Except for 3 holdouts.
3 out of 100, that's not bad.
Then, if Dr. Pelagian carries out his threats, it would be against these holdouts.
Stands to reason. If the Super Friends can convince the 3 holdouts to get on board, they can stop this.
J. Mortimer Hutchinson, Luther Fenwick, and Agatha Carraway.
I've always wanted to meet the celebrated Mr. Fenwick.
And I've always wanted to chat with the fabulous Miss Carraway.
Fine, then we'll all rendezvous at Mr. Hutchison's place, okay?
Sounds like fun.
The first guy is playing polo.
Sorry, Mr. Fenwick, you're out.
Confounded Superman! That would have been a goal.
Probably, but if you want to score a really important goal, come with me to a meeting.
A meeting? I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm playing polo.
And very nicely, too. Now, if you'll just get off your horse.
No, I will not get off my horse.
All right. Your horse can attend the meeting, too.
No less an entity than Superman is telling you this has to happen now, and you're arguing. The more I see of rich people, the more I'm convinced too much money turns you into a bubblehead. Miss Carroway is no exception.
I'm not stepping foot out of this house.
Good. Let Fenwick and Hutchinson find someone else they can push around.
Wait a minute. Luther Fenwick and J. Mortimer Hutchinson?
Yes. Sorry I bothered you.
They tried to push me around?
Well, you know Fenwick and Hutchinson. They feel superior.
They're not humble and grateful for what they have like you.
Fenwick and Hutchinson. Superior to what?
Don't worry, Miss Carroway. I'll invent some reason for your absence.
Stop! Don't you dare!
Nicely done, Wonder Woman. And she deserves to be terrified. As far as she can tell, she's flying on nothing.
The estate of J. Mortimer Hutchinson, wealthy financier, and proud father of his daughter Amanda, whose engagement he's about to announce.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to announce that...
Golly, it's Superman in person.
And Wonder Woman, this is an honor.
J. Mortimer is angry. He says they've ruined the engagement announcement. I say they'll be telling people about this for the rest of their lives.
JM, I just want you to know this was not my idea.
Nor mine. I was led to believe that there was to be an important meeting here.
And so there is, to discuss a certain warning about noon.
Issued by a certain Dr. Pelagian.
That character and his noon warning. You expect me to take him seriously?
They've collected all of you and put you in the same place. Is that serious enough?
I think maybe you should. According to his warning...
You see, 12 o'clock noon, and what's happened? Nothing.
Quite right. This Pelagian's a phony.
Exactly. A fraud. Why, he ought to be...
He ought to be inside out of the rain. In fact, he probably is, unlike you.
Great Scott, what's happened?
Common folks call it a storm. He probably thinks it's something he can buy stock in. But instead of water, it's raining oil.
Oil pollution. Back to the polluters of the sea. And let the other two merchants of smog and pollution be warned. The sea will strike back at them, too.
There, don't tell me you don't have anything to do with that either. We all know you can fly like a bird.
He can fly. A bird can fly. Therefore, it's his fault that a talking bird brought an oil rainstorm. Rich people logic is weird.
Does that give you an idea, Wonder Woman? If we followed that bird...
Yes, it could lead us straight to Dr. Pelagian.
Wonder Woman will shadow it in her plane since that's the least visible way to do it. Too bad whoever's controlling the bird knows she's there and leads her on a wild albatross chase.
Well, we certainly must do this again sometime. And my congratulations to you two.
Hutchinson insisted that they ruined the party. She disagreed, and really nobody was surprised when she gave the ring back. Last anybody heard, she's still holding out for Superman. There is one bit of good news. Aquaman has figured out who Dr. Pelagian really is.
Professor Ansel Hilbrand, the most brilliant marine biologist and engineer I ever met.
Say, I remember him now. Isn't he the leading authority on the albatross?
Right. I haven't heard anything of him for a number of years. But all indications point to the fact that he's probably our man.
Well then, let's check out Professor Ansel Hilbrand.
Professor Ansel Hilbrand is dead. He disappeared in a diving accident a few years ago. Aquaman doesn't buy it. They'll head to Point Gander, the last place he was seen, and investigate.
Success. Aquaman finds what he's been looking for, the deep-sea diving gear with which Professor Ansel Hilbrand made his last fatal descent 5 years ago.
Nobody's surprised when it's empty. He faked his death so he could disappear and emerge as someone else. I have a feeling anybody over 30 has thought about doing that at least once. I know I have. He succeeded, but now he's back and he's very upset. While the supers are figuring out how to track him down, the kids will go try to convince the holdouts to get with the program.
Oops! I accidentally pressed a button and the door opened.
All right, now that you are accidentally in, what do you want? And please be brief.
Sir, do you have any objections to sitting down with Dr. Pelagian?
Wait a minute. You expect me to knuckle under to blackmail?
Oh, of course not.
You think I'm going to let this Dr. Pelagian tell me how to run my business?
You forgot to say, do you know who I am? And by the way, interrupting is rude.
Oh, no, sir.
Then don't even mention that character's name in here.
Sir, that character happens to feel very strongly about pollution.
We all do, don't we?
Why, of course.
You do? But aren't those your factories?
Of course. Why?
With all those chimneys pouring out all that smoke?
That isn't just smoke. That's production.
He's producing something very important. He's producing mobile smoke. It can change location on its own.
Furthermore, I don't need a crackpot like Pelagian to tell me how to run my business.
It's always about their ego.
Or to make a ridiculous fuss about trifles. Let me tell you, there's no harm in a little smoke, and you can tell that. You can tell. Holy smoke! What's all this?
Smoke, I would say.
Yes, Mr. Fenwick, there's no harm in a little smoke. If breathing isn't important to you.
How does your ego get along without oxygen, Mr. Big Shot? And the door is jammed. Good thing the Trouble Alert just notified the Super Friends. Superman is on the way.
Superman, can you lend a hand?
Glad to.
Superman! Oh, am I glad to see you!
Thanks, Wendy. But nobody was in any danger. Some of you-know-who's were.
Another demonstration. Will Luther get the message?
You boy! What are you doing in here? Now state your business.
It concerns pollution, ma'am.
Pollution, pollution, pollution! What about it?
Well, you have an energy generating plant, don't you?
I happen to be the president, if that's what you mean.
Yes, ma'am. According to Dr. Pelagian...
Stop! Don't dare mention that man's name to me!
Being rich means you can get away with being rude to lesser beings. Now go away. She has stock prices to study.
All right, ma'am. Anyway, some folks say lots of pollution gets dumped in the ocean.
Fiddlesticks! All this nonsense about pollution, a little bit never harmed anyone. And furthermore, good gracious, what's happening?
Or maybe the stock prices are studying her. Stock tickers like that, so-called because of the noise they made, no kidding, they go tick, 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 had been in use since about 1870. The information came over telegraph lines and provided real-time updates for people who couldn't hang out on Wall Street all the time. If you've heard of giving someone a ticker tape parade, that's where it comes from. Take the old paper, shred it into confetti, throw it out the window and yell, "Yay!" for whoever. I can't envision her yelling yay for anybody but herself. She spent so many years just watching the stocks, most of her muscles have atrophied to the point where the paper is winning.
What? Why? Marvin, are you okay?
I guess so, but you should have seen the ticker tape machine. It went wild.
It was behaving
Like something dangerous? No, Miss Carraway. This was just a harmless demonstration. Unlike pollution from your factories.
Is she ready to listen? We won't know until we make one more stop.
Well, hello. How glad I am to see all of you.
You are? Even me?
Especially you. Come in, come in.
Perambulating plexiglass. Look at the size of that dome.
Yes, cost me a cool $250,000, but nothing will rain on my daughter's engagement party this time.
It cost him $250,000 for this thing to cover one event. Most of us don't have a quarter of 1,000 to throw around like that.
Dr. Pelagian is a fanatic, but he's also brilliant, determined.
And won't rest until you announce your intention to halt your factory's pollution. I see. Well, what exactly do you suggest?
Some kind of arbitration. Your willingness to sit down and discuss what should be done.
And a statement in the papers to that effect.
All right, here is my statement. No one tells J. Mortimer Hutchinson how to run his business.
I think Dr. Pelagian may disagree, and he has ways of making his thoughts known.
This Pelagian did a fine job of ruining my daughter's engagement party the last time, but I'd just like to see him try it now.
Challenge accepted.
Superman, Wonder Woman, anyone, what should I do?
Take cover!
That's right.
Challenge accomplished.
The holdouts are still holding out. Their only hope now is to try and find Dr. Pelagian and convince him to back off. Marvin has an idea about that.
Marvin, sometimes you're a teensy bit obscure.
Look, Wendy, Sherlock Holmes and all the other pros are always reenacting the circumstances surrounding the crime, right?
Marvin, you're still obscure.
Don't you see? We'll do everything that we did before.
And, according to your theory,
It will lead us right to Dr. Pelagian.
They buy Wonder Dog a hot dog, but he's not allowed to ride the Ferris wheel because he never wants to stop. He'll go wait on the beach.
It's Wonder Dog napping on the beach.
amazing. Tell me more.
Okay, a fly just started buzzing around his nose.
Marvelous. Tell me more.
And here comes a penguin waddling up to Wonder Dog.
Isn't that nice? A penguin. A penguin?
It's not a penguin. Dr. Pelagian put his albatross in a fancy suit. If that thing isn't a clue, it's an excellent imitation of one. Follow it.
Wonder Dog, don't hurt him.
Come on, Wonder Dog.
Wonder, come here, boy. Come here.
Nice dog. Nice dog.
Marvin, this rock is moving.
Something tells me it's not a rock.
What then?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Tell me anyway.
A whale?
He's right. It's a big sperm whale, which, as we know, is the only type of whale cartoonists know how to draw, and it's taking them away from shore.
Marvin, we've stopped. Is that a good sign?
As long as he doesn't decide to go snorkeling.
What is that?
That is the Sprite. The whale fell in love with it some time ago. It's been proposing for several months, but all it gets is the silent treatment.
Wendy and Marvin, my name is Dr. Pelagian. Won't you come aboard?
Dr. Pelagian?
Why, yes, I guess we would.
He confirms that yes, he is Ansel Hilbrand. He dropped out of society to live on this submarine, and he's vowed not to return to land until people stop polluting. I hope he has a big gas tank. The Sprite, as he calls it, is fully automated, so he doesn't need a crew. It's just him and his ocean-going friends.
Maurice. And here are more dear friends. Meet Hector and Helen. Not only my friends, also my messengers, my eyes, my ears.
And your voice, too. Right, sir?
Ah, Marvin, you've heard it, eh? Let's proceed. Rex, the whale, you've already met.
Oh, sure. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for his taxi service.
They didn't know they'd hailed a taxi at the time, but by the time they realized it, there wasn't much they could do but just go with it. At least the meter wasn't running. He explains that he's developed a way to communicate with the sea creatures telepathically, just like Aquaman does. This could get interesting. There's a special news report coming in. Maybe those three have changed their minds.
And I speak for Luther Fenwick and Miss Carroway when I say that we will never take orders from anyone or change the way we conduct our business.
That means big trouble for those three.
Or not. Doesn't this man understand? We are rich. We are allowed to do as we please.
Very well. Those three must be taught a lesson.
What are you going to do, sir?
Even before I took to the ocean, I had discovered the last big secret. The secret of tapping the limitless energy of underwater volcanoes.
He's figured out how to manipulate underwater volcanoes to produce crazy weather and all the rest.
Okay.
They need to get a message to the Super Friends, but how?
Letters to the editors of all the large newspapers, advising them to expect something big to happen today.
How are you going to send them, sir?
By Albatross Express, as usual. I'm off to get them now.
That's it. We'll enclose a letter to the Super Friends.
Right. But to be absolutely certain, it should go special delivery.
You mean one of us should go along with it?
Which one of them weighs the least? I'm gonna say Wendy, but they think it's Wonder Dog. Into the pouch he goes. And you could tell from his reaction that he knew he was gonna be the volunteer.
Finally, the Super Friends learn that Wendy and Marvin are aboard Dr. Pelagian's submarine somewhere in the ocean. And at exactly 5 o'clock, artificially created tidal waves will come crashing against the factories of the Unholy Three.
Why was that narration instead of dialogue? Have Robin read the letter. I see lots of places in this show like that. Don't tell us what's happening, have your characters do it. I really want to hear Casey Kasem say, Unholy Three.
One down, two to go.
Superman, you are gonna put all that stuff back where it was, right? That was Fenwick's place. The second one is headed for Hutchinson's place.
Look, Superman, that give you any ideas? Perfect. One for you. One for me. Away we go.
Two down, one to go.
Both men were watching and realizing that if the Super Friends didn't exist, neither would their factories. Miss Carraway, can you learn from what's happening to them?
Well, at least this has to be his last target.
All this energy available to us, Aquaman. Any ideas?
Aren't those Freon coils?
They sure are. Robin, what do Freon coils and unlimited power add up to?
A refrigerator. But the biggest ever seen, right?
Right.
More like a freezer, and sure enough, it freezes the last tidal wave. Major points for imagination.
Within moments, three not unfamiliar figures make an appearance on the beach.
Gentlemen, I speak for Miss Carraway and Mr. Fenwick. Don't you always? But this time I mean to say all of us.
What he's trying to say is we're ready to sit down and discuss things with anyone.
Just to make sure they know their place, they can start with Wonder Dog and work their way up.
Tottering tycoons, listen to that.
And we're determined now to do all we can to fight pollution.
If you happen to see Dr. Pelagian, please tell him that.
It's nice what you can accomplish with a little tidal wave or two among friends.
All three tidal waves turned aside and stopped. But I'm not defeated. I'll create the greatest sandstorm ever seen. I'll turn continents into deserts, create one giant wasteland. I'll show them!
Wonderful. That's the way to fight pollution.
Yeah, pollute the whole world, then no one will care anymore.
At some point, it stopped being about pollution and started being about him winning. While he's moping, Aquaman and Superman have gone into the ocean to find his sub. Aquaman will summon some help.
Giant squid, and they look menacing.
No problem, Superman. I'm communicating with them. They'll move aside.
Very well done. An ink screen.
Something's curious here. It's almost as if they're not getting my signal.
That's because they're not. Pelagian got inside their heads first. He sends some sharks after them that these two insist on calling whales, but Aquaman will lead them off so Superman can go after the sub.
Those whales are still looking for me in the Sargasso Sea.
You do know if they get entangled and drowned, it's your fault. Expect a lawsuit from their families.
Dr. Pelagian, I presume.
Or more properly, Professor Hilbrand.
By any name, I've lost my war.
You're wrong, Professor. First of all, it was never just your war.
A great many people have never stopped fighting the war against pollution.
If he listened to the news a little more consistently, he might have known that. But as I said, he got a little too far up his own oil slick.
Yes, but unlike yours, their tactics never endangered the nation.
Yes, I guess I deserve to lose.
Wrong again, Professor. Hutchinson, Fenwick, and Carraway, they're on your side now.
And maybe everyone else is too.
So you see, Professor, we may all wind up as the winners.
What constitutes winning, Professor? If the goal was to get these three on board, then you won. If the idea was to get them all to stop the pollution right this second, then you're overdue for a psych evaluation. It's physically impossible. Millions of people depend on some of those polluters for their very lives. It's called electricity. We're even more dependent on it now than we were in 1977. But in either time, if you shut the power plants off, then everybody would be plunged into darkness, and there's only one thing to do in the dark, and then we'd have a whole new baby boom because it's too dark to find the condoms, and it's just a mess. Don't try it. Majority of the was in shrubs. Shrubs? Okay, unplug your nose. Yeah, you gotta come out. Exist. Never. Works after them. Ow! Don't bite yourself. The whole man, I was so close.